Can you imagine a world without Texas, where everyone speaks Spanish? And why was the Alamo so important? What did the war with Mexico really accomplish for the United States? Hi, I'm Evan Nash, and you're about to find out.
In 1821, Mexico had separated completely from Spain. This may seem insignificant as to how it affected the American way of life today, but without Spain as the dominant power in the region, Mexico split the territories into individually armed segments because it did not have a standing army. Texas was scarcely populated, and Mexico wanted more people in the region to ensure a standing militia could defend the people and allowed immigrants to settle without having to worry about paying taxes for 10 years. American settlers soon populated the land, but when Mexico decided Texas had enough people, they took away the laws and started heavily taxing any importation of goods from the United States, causing an uproar of Texan prowess. This is what sparked the fight for Texan independence.
Now, during this time, the Mexican army was having serious problems. Because of the political instability in Mexico City, the army was denied sound leadership, proper training, and support. Because of this disability to the Mexican army, the Texan army enjoyed its first victory at the military post of Gonzales. On March 2nd of 1836, Texas declared its independence from Mexico. Shortly after, the Texans created a new constitution that specifically protected slavery.
As opposed to what most people picture when they envision the Alamo, the building was never intended to be a fort. The Alamo was actually a Catholic mission that had been abandoned when Spain relinquished its claims in the New World. 180 militiamen under the command of William Travis decided to lie in wait there for the Mexican army in an attempt to buy Sam Houston's army time to organize.
Wait, did you say only 180 men? Taking out on the entire Mexican army?
That's right, 180 men with extreme courage and dedication. In fact, when the Mexican army did finally arrive, the Texans managed to hold off the Mexicans for almost 2 weeks, giving Houston's army plenty of time to prepare.
What happened to the Texans once they held the church for almost 2 weeks?
Sadly, the Texans were all martyred in the cause of freedom. However, they affected the incredible ratio of Mexican to Texan losses of about 1 to 3, and thus created the rallying cry, "Remember the Alamo," that gave hope and drive to the Texans for the rest of the conflict.
Majority of Texas voted for annexation. Andrew Jackson, however, didn't annex them until the last days of his office. He waited a few years so he wouldn't increase the tension between the North and the South. In addition, he tried to refrain from war with Mexico, who continued to claim ownership of Texas. Later, after the Mexican War was over, Texas was recognized as an independent state.
President James A. Polk, seeing that Manifest Destiny could finally be realized, sent General Zachary Taylor to the border and on, to lure the Mexican troops into firing first, so that he would have the backing of the American people. The Mexican army went for the bait, and thus started the Mexican-American War.
Zachary Taylor was a general. He fought in the War of 1812, and after Texas was added to the United States, President James K. Polk sent Taylor and an army to secure the new state.
And what was his part in starting the Mexican War?
The 62-year-old general, while in Texas, drove out Mexican forces in that region.
And what did he do in the actual war?
He fought in some of the battles, but he also captured Monterrey, which is a city in Mexico. He followed the Mexicans back to the city and conquered it. He also kept his troops up in Texas while General Winfield Scott took most of Taylor's army to attack Mexico City.
Who was Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna?
He was a dominant figure in Mexican politics in much of the 19th century.
What did he do when Texas gained its independence?
When Texas declared independence in 1836, Antonio brought a massive army to Texas, and he had crops burned, prisoners, and livestock killed, and this caused him to be alienated by many of the Texans who supported him.
The Mexican-American War was like giving a Rubik's Cube to a blind person. It's entirely unfair. The American Army had approximately 59,000 well-trained troops, while the Mexican Army had between 35 and 60,000 men that were simply there to provide for their families. This being said, the Mexican Army would usually flee after the first few volleys were fired, not being disciplined enough to be any real use on the battlefield. The war from beginning to end was a mismatch, and the Mexicans had no fighting chance to hold off any American advance. This massive fault on the Mexicans' part left the western end of their property more or less undefended, letting the U.S. occupy all land from Louisiana to California. After 2 years of fighting in many of the large Mexican cities under American control, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed.
The Mexican War ended in 1848 when the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed. This document gave the United States 500,000 square miles of new land. This treaty made an understanding between the USA and Mexico that the United States would have the Rio Grande as the border between Mexico and Texas. Mexico also gave these modern-day states and areas: Upper California, New Mexico, Arizona, and parts of Utah, Nevada, and Colorado. The purchase of these states is called the Mexican Cession. It also told the United States to pay $15 million in exchange for the land, and that the Mexican government would pay back any debts that they incurred from the United States. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed February 2nd, 1848, and today it is the oldest treaty still being enforced between the United States and Mexico.
If these events were to have changed in any way, our country would not only look different, but operate different. There would be no Hollywood, your porch may carry a Mexican flag rather than an American one, and the boots you are so fond of, Matt, would have never come about. So I guess that you could say, while often overlooked, Texan independence and the Mexican-American War was an integral part of our nation's evolution. For this, we should be grateful.